So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to lecture 7 of Grid and Cloud Computing. So, last class we discussed about three factors of a distributed system. One is with respect to the performance, second is with respect to the security, third is the with respect to the energy efficiency. Today, we'll continue our discussion from the energy efficiency point of view. So if you go for energy consumption of a unused server, as you know that data center is having thousands to million of servers. So if you go to the particular data center, some of the servers are not completely used. For example, if one statistic says that 15% of the full-time server, whatever server is used in a particular company, if you see 15% of the server are completely idle. So they are not used. They are left powered on, but they are not actively used. Just like I will switch on my computer system, but I will not do any work in my computer system. That means my computer system in the idle stage. So even if it is in the idle stage, it is drawing the power, because you know that if, for example, in your laptop, suppose if you put your laptop on for 5 hours or 6 hours, after 6 hours the battery is down, right? So similarly, if you see 15% of the full-time server of a company is completely idle and no work is done in that particular servers, right? Similarly, if you consider this example, 44 million servers are there in the world. In 40 out of 44 million servers, 4.7 million servers are not doing any work. So imagine, out of 44, 4.7 servers are consuming power, consuming electricity, and they require cooling system, they require chiller, many things are maintenance also required, but they are not doing a single amount of work. So in order to go for energy efficiency, you have to ensure that these servers should be put in shutdown mode. They should not be on if they are not going to be used. So if you see, if you want to turn off these servers, that is 4.7 million server, if you want to put switch off out of 44 million server, the energy cost $3.8 billion energy cost will be saved. Similarly, if you see including the cost of the server, $24.7 billion total cost will be saved if you will apply some energy efficient algorithms. So if you consider these 4.7 million servers, these 4.7 million servers generates heat also. If you consider energy wastage of these servers, it is 11.8 million tons of carbon dioxide per year. So with this amount of carbon dioxide, if you compare with our transportation system, so 2.1 million cars can be run if you switch off these particular servers. So that the energy consumed by these 4.7 million servers is same as 2.1 million car running fuels and generating carbon dioxide. So imagine how much energy we are wasting and how much carbon dioxide we are generating without using that particular server. Similarly, if you consider United States having 3.17 million tons of carbon dioxide is generated, which is equivalent to 5,80,678 cars. So whatever energy consumed by this, the same amount is consumed by the 4.7 the servers, that is idle servers of United States, and they are consuming 3.17 million tons of carbon dioxide. So with these statistics, the main motivation is that whenever we are not using our computer system, or whenever we are not using the resources of the data center, it should be put in switch off mode so that energy and cost can be minimized. That's why we have to analyze which server is not used or which server is underutilized. If a server is underutilized, we can migrate the load of that server to another server and put that server in the switch off mode. For example, if you consider two servers, one server, both servers are, let's say, identical server. First server is busy for 40% of time, second server is busy for 20% of time. So if you consider these two servers, the server 2 load can be migrated to server 1, so that the server 1 load can be increased to 60%, and we will put the second server in the switch off mode. So those resources are underutilized or unused, you should put them in switch off mode in order to save energy and as well as in order to save the cost. So this particular this is a particular, there are 4 operational layer in context of the power management issues of distributed computing. If you see in the top part, several applications are there. Generally, I refer weather forecasting applications, or you can go for DNS sequence application, or maybe a event simulation analysis application, and high energy physics applications. So all the applications are related to the application layer, and the complete structure is divided into 4 layers. One is called as application layer, middleware layer, resources layer, and the bottom one is called as the network layer. So if you see that there is a relationship between each and every layer, so they are given a set of responsibility, and they have to deal with that responsibility in order to complete a particular work. So as an example, if you see the first part is application layer. Application layer solves the science and engineering applications. It may be a weather forecasting applications, or it may be a DNS sequencing application, or it may be ABC at home application. Any type of application you require, that applications can be run in the application layer. So while you are going for application layer, you have to concentrate on 2 important things. One is called as performance, another is called as energy consumption. So if you want to increase the performance, at the same time energy consumption is also drastically increased. So you have to ensure that how you can increase the performance by degrading the number, by degrading or by minimizing the energy consumption, so that it will not affect to our environment, such that the greenhouse effect kind of thing should not occur in our environment. So application layer also focuses the performance of application layer. If you want to analyze, you have to see how many instructions you are executing per second or per minute or per hour. Similarly, you can see in the number of transactions completed in a time stamp. So by looking into that, you can say how you can predict that at what time the particular application will be going to be completed. So if you focus on these, you have to concentrate on 2 factors: how much computational instructions you are executing, and how you are storing the outcomes in the form of storage. So completion times plays an important role of any particular applications. For example, I will say this particular program, if you run, that program will be completed by today 5 p.m. So you have to determine the completion time, which consists how much time you are computing your program, how much time you are executing your program, as well as how much time it takes to store the output as well. So this is the responsibility of application layer. Similarly, if you go for the middleware layer, as you can see here, middleware layer is a if top of the middle layer you have an application layer, and the bottom part you have a resource layer. So middle layer is, you can say, a bridge between the application layer and resource layer. So what the middleware layers do? Middleware layers do some kind of resource brokering policies. Resource brokering policy says that, for example, if you are not aware that how to book a flight ticket, so what you will do? You will go to a broker and you will tell your requirement, and on behalf of you, that broker will book a flight ticket for you. Similarly, whenever a particular user want to use the grid or cloud system, the user may not be aware how to use this system or how to make a request. So broker policies are there, or brokers are there, who is acting on behalf of the user, and they can allocate the resources as for the requirement of the user. Similarly, communication between 2 different components is the responsibility of the middleware layer. As I mentioned earlier also, if you remember, I told you about single system image. Single system image is also belongs to this particular middleware layer, which abstract the complexity of the infrastructure. Similarly, whether a task is executed or a task is scheduled, and what is the security policies you have enforced, or what is the reliability, what is the availability of the particular task, or information service capability, these things are the responsibility of the middleware layer. So middleware layer bridges the gap between the application layer, which is submitted by a particular user, and manages the resource layer and mapping the user work with the resource layer. That's why middleware layer is much more important in comparison to other layer. So whenever user is submitting a particular work to a computer system, so user generally submit this application a work to a computer system in the form of task. So in operating system also, you have seen several processes are there. In several processes, you are scheduling to a particular computer system. So similarly, a task of a particular user is submitted to a particular computer system. So similarly, other users are also submitting their task to a particular computer system. So if I consider the works of two particular user, so I will see after how at what particular time both users' task will be completed. That is called as our max span. Suppose I will assign two assignments to you. One assignment is completed at let's say 9 p.m. Another assignment is completed let's say tomorrow 6 a.m. Then you can say tomorrow 6 a.m. is nothing but the make span. So you have to, if multiple tasks are there, then you have to see how you can minimize the make span so that that task scheduling algorithm is said to be an efficient one. So whatever work is assigned to you, it is you have to try to complete the task as soon as possible. That is the objective of the task scheduling. Similarly, you can also map the time with respect to the cost functions as well, or you can also map that time with your energy consumption components also. For example, a system is on for 6 hours, whatever energy is consumed, definitely it is more than if a computer system is on for only an hour. So that is that kind of things you can compare in order to develop a energy efficient algorithm. Similarly, come to the resource layer. Resource layer, we are focusing on the various resources of the data center. Generally, resources are nothing but the computational resources or the storage resources. So both need to be minimized, both need to be managed in a proper way so that maximum users work we can compute in the data center or maximum users work can be stored in the data center. So in order to deal with this energy efficiency, the resource layer uses dynamic power management. Dynamic power management says that, for example, if you are not using your resources, the energy consumption should be as low as possible. I am using my computer system now in order to execute a particular program. At that time, the power management should be as high as possible. Similarly, DPM policy, these dynamic power management policies, plays an important role, so in which you can convert a particular computer system to idle to a, let's say, low power mode or idle to active mode. So you know in your computer system also you have two buttons, that is called as sleep button, another is called hibernate button. So whenever you are not using your computer system, you are using sleep and hibernate button in order to save the battery power, right? Similarly, in the DPM policy says that why not divide the modes into multiple parts so that whenever we are not using the computer system, we can move from one mode to another mode in order to save the power. So one of the important technique of energy efficiency, that is called as dynamic voltage frequency scheme, frequency scaling, DVFS. It is a very popular technique which says that, you know, in computer you have a CMOS circuit, that is called as a metal oxide semiconductor circuit. So if you see, the power consumption of a CMOS circuit is very high. So in order to save the energy, you have to see that how you can minimize the power consumed by a CMOS circuit. So if you see in this DVFS technique, one formula was there in which it shows that there is a direct relationship between for the frequency f and there is a direct relationship with the voltage square. So if you want to calculate the energy efficiency of a particular system, if you see that particular formula has direct relationship with your frequency f and square of the voltage supply. So similarly, you have to estimate if your work is submitted to a particular cloud or a grid computing system. So you have to see that how much time that particular work is taking in the system and how much power is consumed in the system. So that you will see that at what time you require more resources, at what time you require less resources. Accordingly, you can regulate different frequencies in order to minimize the efficiency of the system, in order to minimize the power consumption of the system. The last one is called the network layer. Network layer is responsible for routing. I told you routing means finding a path from a source to destination. So similarly, whenever you are executing your work, all the works may not be executed in a same computer system. So what you will do, you will divide the work into small parts. You can say you can give a work to different computer systems and finally collect the results. So routing and transferring of the packets, you have to determine which path you have to follow from a particular component to another particular component. So if you see in this network layer, there are two major challenges in the context of designing energy efficient network. First one is you have to represent the network. So the network may be represented in the form of a star topology, network may be represented in the form of a mesh topology, it may be bus topology, it may be any hybrid topology. So you have to focus that how much time it is taking, what is the storage space it is taking, how much energy is consumed. For example, one node is there in India, another node in US. So if you transport the data from India to US, the communication time may be little bit more. So instead of choosing a India server with US server, you can take India server with Bangladesh server so that you can transport the data and you can minimize the energy. So you have to also focus on the second challenges, that is called as energy efficient routing algorithms, in which you can devise various type of protocol. So in network also you have studied one of the very popular protocol you are using day to day life, that is called as HTTP protocol. Whenever you are browsing a particular website, you are using HTTP protocol. Similarly, you have to divide, you have to develop various energy efficient protocols so that that protocols is not only providing energy efficiency but also protect any network from any kind of attack. Like I discussed the last class about denial of service attack, or you know there is a Trojan virus is there. Such type of viruses should be avoided in a particular computer network. So if you come to the DBFS system, this DBFS system, the formula is, as I mentioned, this is nothing but the frequency and voltage square. So you can calculate energy by the help of the C efficient and frequency voltage square into T. T is nothing but your the time period, and F is nothing but the frequency, B is the voltage, and C efficient is nothing but the circuit switching capability. So in network we have studied that there is three types of switching: packet switching, circuit switching, and message switching. So here we are using circuit switching concepts, so in order to calculate the energy efficiency. So you have to see that if you are running two different tasks, let's say T1, T2, how you can execute these two tasks without any interference among T1, T2. So it may happen that the output of T1 is the input to T2. So inter-task relationship you have to calculate. Based upon that, you can see that whether a computer system is you can put a computer system in the idle mode or not. So this particular formula, if you want to calculate the frequency, this frequency also depends upon a very important factor, that is called capital K. Capital K is nothing but a technology dependent parameter. As you know that whatever technology is there in let's say last 10 years, they are rapidly changing. That's why one factor K is multiplied here. So in order to monitor the current technologies, and based upon that you can calculate the frequency. Then it is calculated as Vt. Vt is nothing but a threshold voltage, and V is nothing but a simple voltage divided by voltage. By using this particular formula, you can calculate the DVFS system, and you can calculate how much energy is consumed by a particular system. So one of the conclusion with this DBS system is that if you can reduce the voltage as well as the frequency, as energy consumption is directly proportional to your frequency and voltage. So if you can minimize frequency as well as voltage, then energy consumption can also be drastically reduced. So this is the conclusion of the DBF system. So as you can see in this particular slide, there are two graphs. If you see in the first graph, I am taking a frequency of 200 megahertz. Second times I am taking a frequency of 100 megahertz. So as I am taking less frequency in this second diagram, obviously the energy consumption will be less in the second diagram in comparison to the previous diagram. So you have to try to minimize the frequency as well as voltage. It may be little bit more time. As you can see in the second diagram, it is continuing up to 6, it is continuing up to 6, but the frequency is reduced to 100. So second system is a very good system in comparison to the first computer systems. So in this manner you can calculate the energy efficiency of the systems. Now let me go through one poll, then we'll start the module 2. Can you please answer this particular question? So all of you please answer the particular question. Which one is not a layer in the context of power management issues of distributed computing platform? Which one is not a layer? The question is about not a layer. The question is not about a layer. It is not a layer. Which layer we have not discussed in today's class? Okay, I'm stopping the poll. Which one is correct answer? Can anybody say?
Physical layer.
Physical layer, right? The topmost layer is the application layer. Followed by application layer, you have a middleware layer, in which I told you middleware layer is a bridge between the application and resource layer. And the next part, the last layer is called the network layer, not the physical layer. But physical layer is there in the OSI ISO reference model. Okay, next we will start the module 2 part. In module 2, we'll focus on these 5 components. First part we will see how to design a cloud computing platforms. In the first module, I told you about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, or I told you about private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, or community cloud. So these service models we will see, and how these service models are designed, we will focus on this particular part. Then we'll focus on the data center design and how to design a data center, what are the components of the data center, what are the interconnection network, how you are interconnecting one particular server with another particular servers or storage devices with the computational devices. Third part we will see the architectural design of compute and the storage cloud. If you can see that if there is a compute cloud is there, just you know in grid we have mentioned about the computational grid and data grid. So similarly here we will see if you want to design a compute cloud, what should be the architecture, what should be the component, or if you want to store the cloud like Gmail is storing our emails. So if you design such particular cloud, so what should be the architectural diagram? Then we will see what are the various cloud service providers like Google and some other companies also providing cloud services that we will discuss. That is called as your public cloud platform. Then we'll see how one cloud is interacted with another cloud and why they need a collaboration. That we'll see in the inter-cloud resource management. In the last part, we'll see various security issues and trust management. How one cloud service provider is trusting other cloud service provider, or one user is trusting a particular cloud service provider. We'll see in this particular module. So in today's class, I will try to cover the first part or some part of the first point, that is design of cloud computing platforms and cloud computing and service model. So if you see the past 2 decades, last 20 years, if you focus on the world economic is moving from the manufacturing industry to the service oriented industry. So earlier there is a manufacturing industry, but now people are focused on the service oriented industry. For example, you are subscribing various things. You are subscribing your mobile connection, or you are subscribing a particular let's say Netflix connections, or you are subscribing newspaper or subscribing various things, right? So based on the availability and various services, you are going to you are going to pay for the required services. If the services is not paid, if the services is not provided in a better way, so you are not going to pay for that particular service. As I mentioned that, for example, if you want to subscribe newspaper, if a newspaper is delivered before 8 a.m., then only you are going to pay. For example, if in a particular month a newspaper is delivered 25 days, 25 days prior to morning 8 a.m. So you are going to pay for only these 25 days rather than paying the newspaper for 30 days. So based upon the services, you are going to pay. So if you see US economy in 2010, if you focus on that, 80% is based upon this economy is relying on 80% about the service industry, 15% to the manufacturing industry, and 5% to the agriculture and other areas. So if you see, service industry is dominating your manufacturing industry because people are now heading towards the service industry instead of going for the manufacturing industry. Similarly, I told you about the public cloud, that public cloud you are using Gmail, private cloud is nothing but your university email ID, hybrid cloud is nothing but you can combine the public cloud and private cloud to provide various services. So that these services are provided based upon the pay per use model. For example, early days internet is not that much popular. So what we are doing, we are going to cyber cafe. We are going to a internet cafe or a cyber cafe. In that cyber cafe, what we are doing, we are paying, let's say, rupees 10 rupees per hour, and we are browsing the internet. So suppose I want to browse the internet for 2 hours. So per hour it is 10 rupees. So I am paying 20 rupees for browsing 2 hours of internet. So what I am doing, the computer system is not purchased by me. Internet is also not purchased by me. This is purchased by a particular internet cafe manager, and I am using the services by the internet cafe manager, and I am paying the services based upon my use. Suppose I want to attend a particular lecture, that let's say the lecture is for 6 hours. For that particular day, I have to pay 60 rupees to my cyber cafe owner, right? So as per my use, whether I am using 6 hour or 2 hour or 1 hour, based upon that I am going to pay for that particular service. So we did not purchase the infrastructure, we need not purchase the internet connections, or we need not purchase different types of accessories associated with the computer system. Rather than we are getting the services without seeing that who is going to maintain it, or whether if a particular hard disk is crashed in an internet cafe, we are not responsible for it. It's because we are using the resources in a pay per use basis. Whatever resource we will use, based upon that we are going to pay for it. As I already mentioned in the first class only, cloud computing is focused on the high throughput computing instead of going for high performance computing. But if you go for early computing structure, they are using HPC architecture, not the HTC architecture. But cloud computing is primarily focused on the high throughput computing. It is assessing that how much work you can complete in a particular time frame. So if you want to, you can use the resources of the cloud computing anywhere, anytime through the connected devices, and you have to ensure that your connected device, it may be your smartphone, it may be your tablet, it may be your PDA, it may be your desktop, it may be your laptop, it should be connected to the internet in order to access the Gmail. So Gmail is nothing but a popular cloud Google services what we are using, but you know that without internet it is not practically possible to it is not practically possible to access the Gmail services. So you have to ensure that internet connectivity should be there in the connected devices in order to get the services. So if you see, cloud computing also focuses that cloud computing places the data center in various parts of the world. If you concentrate on various these data centers, cloud computing primarily focus that there should not be a data movement from a data center to another data center. If there is a large data movement from one place to another place, as I mentioned, if a particular server is there in India, another server is there in the US. So if there is a large data movement from India to US, then the communication time will be increased. If the communication time will be increased, so it will degrade the performance of the system. So you have to ensure that there should not be large data movement from one computer system to another computer systems. And also you have to ensure that the network bandwidth between two computer system or two different servers should be as high as possible. That's why better bandwidth utilization is required in order to transfer the data from one computer system to another computer system. So as you know that if a particular computer system, we can install the VMware. As I mentioned, VMware provide the virtualization technique. By applying this VMware, so what you can do, you can run multiple operating system. For example, I am installing Windows operating system, another I am installing Linux operating systems. These I can install in a computer system and I can execute the work. So two user, if a user is interested in the first operating system, another user is interested in the second operating system, both can execute the same physical resources in order to get the services. That's why virtualization is an important role in the cloud computing, which provided the resource utilization. Earlier, one user is dedicated to a particular computer system, but by the help of virtualization technique, multiple users are now interested for the computer system, so resource utilization is increased. And increase the application flexibility. Various kind of applications these user can run in the computer systems. So it is increasing the application flexibility, and also the cost is also reduced. So in the traditional way, each and every user is using a single computer system. But what happened in this virtualization technique, both users are using the same computer systems. So the cost is also drastically reduced. And cloud computing also provided one of the important characteristics, as I mentioned earlier, that is called as your scalability. Scalability says that you can increase the number of server from 2 to 100 and you can decrease the server from 100 to 2 as and when required. So this expansion or this suppression is done on demand. At any point of time, if you feel that your company is not running in profit, you can reduce to a small number of servers. Or if you are assuming that your company is having a good amount of say a surplus or a good profit, then you can increase the server from 2 to 100. As I earlier mentioned also that if you concentrate on Flipkart, Flipkart is launching the Big Billion Day. So in Big Billion Day, Flipkart know that maximum user will visit to Flipkart website. So what they are using in that particular day, they are increasing the number of servers to a very large number, and after the Big Billion Day is over, they are again reducing into a small number of servers. So on-demand provisioning of electric resources are provided by cloud computing. So if you compare the centralized system with the distributed system, centralized computing systems, data centers are generally placed in a single place. So in all over the world, there are many data centers are there. They are present in the various part of the world. But if you concentrate on a single system, single data center, it is a completely a centralized system. So many researcher or many computer scientists suggested that cloud computing is a centralized computing as the data center is present in a single place. On contrary, many researchers and scientists also told that no, cloud computing is a distributed parallel computing systems. As these data centers are present all over the world, they are not, even if they are present in a single place, all the data centers are not placed in a single place. They are placed in all over the world, so they can be treated as a distributed systems. So in these data centers, you have a lot of servers. In each and every server, you can create a multiple virtual machine, and each and every virtual machine you can dedicate to a particular user, so that multiple user can execute the resources of a particular server. So if you go to the cloud service market, you can see Amazon is a leading cloud service provider. Amazon is providing cloud computing. In fact, Amazon is popular for infrastructure as a service cloud. Similarly, Google is also a very popular cloud service provider. You are using various services like Gmail is provided by Google, and Google Docs also you are using. G Docs is also provided by Google. Google Meet is also used in nowadays. Instead of you are using Zoom platform, few organizations are also using Google Meet, and Google Drives are also used. These are the various services provided by Google. Similarly, Microsoft is also providing various clouds, and these are the leading cloud service provider in all over the world. So it may happen that whatever servers present in the Europe, there are some servers are present in the Europe and some servers are present in the United States, or you can say some data centers are there in the Europe and some data centers are there in the United States. So it may happen that Europe people may not feel comfortable to store their data in the United States server, or it may happen that United States people server will not feel comfortable to store the data in the Europe server. So what they are doing in order to save the data of one country of another country, for example, whatever emails are there in Gmail, in your Gmail, you do not know whether that emails are present in inside India boundary or outside the India boundary. For example, they are present in let's say in Japan. Okay, our emails are stored in the data center that is residing in the Japan. So what happened? There should be a contract between India's cloud service provider, or the service provider has to sign with the government of India as well as the government of Japan, so that one data of the data the data available in the Japan should not be misused by the people of Japan, which is originally belongs to India. That's why what they are doing, they are signing one type of agreement. That agreement is called a service level agreement. So in this case, Europe should sign an agreement with the United States, as well as United States will sign a agreement with Europe, so that this discomfort will be discarded, so that you can store your data in all over the world. Similarly, if you want to come to public cloud is nothing but our Gmail, so it can be accessed by any user. Any user want to create a Gmail account, he can create a Gmail account without any hesitation. So there are some public cloud name is called as Google App Engine is a public cloud, Amazon Web Service, Microsoft Azure, IBM Blue Cloud, Salesforce.com, that is the called as Force.com. So these are the popular cloud service provider which is providing public clouds. Similarly, if you come to the private cloud, that is your your private cloud is nothing but your university email ID. For example, in our institute email ID, it is at nitw.ac.in. So nitw.ac.in is a private cloud. So this nitwac.in is nothing but the within the domain of an intranet. It may be available in the intranet of NITW, and it is owned by a single organization or single institute or single university like NITW. So anybody is outside NITW, they will not. They are unable to create an email ID in NITW domain. So you can say it is more secure in comparison to your public cloud. So it is limited to the client and their partners. So those who are belongs to those students are belongs to this NITW, or those faculty staffs are belongs to NITW, they can access this particular cloud. Others are not able to access to this particular cloud. So in order to avoid this barrier between the public cloud and private cloud, hybrid cloud is launched. Hybrid cloud is taking public cloud and private cloud at a same time, at a same public cloud and private cloud at the same picture, so that you can use both cloud at the same time. As an example, if you see of a hybrid cloud, if you go to IBM Research Compute Cloud, so this is a IBM very popular cloud that is called as RC2. IBM RC2 interconnects 8 IBM research center. IBM has various research center in all over the world. So this particular cloud RC2 takes 8 IBM research center that are present in maybe United States, Europe, and Asia. So these 8 research centers are clubbed in using hybrid cloud, so that the people who are working in a particular project or a particular research work, they can collaborate each other and provide solutions or discuss various kind of solutions and develop various kind of solutions. In that context, hybrid cloud is much more advantageous in comparison to public and private cloud. So if you see, as I discussed also, if you see in the bottom box is called as a hybrid cloud, in which IBM RC2 is a private cloud, and also it is clubbed with the public cloud, which is offered by maybe a Microsoft Azure, or maybe Force.com, or maybe Amazon AWS, or by IBM Cloud and Google App Engine. So both public cloud and private cloud is merged into a single unit that we call as a hybrid cloud. So based upon the requirement of a particular user, you can decide whether your organization require public cloud or private cloud, or they need a hybrid cloud. So you have to focus on your organizational strength, whether your organization is having a strength of, let's say, 5,000 people or 10,000 people, whether to purchase a email server is better or to move to the cloud is better. That you have to decide, and if you are deciding to the cloud, then you have to decide which type of cloud will be beneficial to you. Similarly, if you want to come to data center networking structure, data center, you know, there are several servers are there. So whatever loads of a particular data center varies to another data center. For example, data center is there, one data center is there in the United States. In United States, whatever workload of that particular data center, it is completely different of the workload of, let's say, some data center is present in Mumbai, India, right? So you cannot see that, say that all the data centers are having same load. So in order to see that, you have to develop various load balancing policies. For example, you know that Dasara season or any festival seasons, people are visiting Flipkart, Amazon, these websites very frequently. So at that time, the loads, whatever received by Flipkart or Amazon, it is very huge. So that is called as our fluctuating workload. So if there is a festival season, the workload is very high. If it is a normal day, the workload is very low. So in that context, if you are using cloud is a very beneficial in this context, because you can scale the number of servers to a very big value, or you can reduce to a small value based upon your requirement. So many people are confused with these two words. One is called data center and another is called supercomputer. Because supercomputer is also placed in a single place. Data center is also placed in a single place. But data center and that supercomputer, they are different from each other. For example, I told you data center may consist of 50,000 servers, or it may consist of some million servers as well. For example, if you see, Microsoft has deployed one data center in Chicago, in the place of Chicago, in which there is 1 lakh 8 core servers are there. The total number of servers is 1 lakh, and each and every servers are having 8 different cores. So these data centers may be also placed with the container. Like you know that in let's say in national highway, a vehicle is going with let's say 16 or 24 wheels. That wheels is having a container. Similarly, data centers are also placed as a container. So Microsoft also deployed 50 containers in Chicago. But if you come to the supercomputer structure, supercomputer also having various servers, but they are connected through custom design high bandwidth network, such as Fat Tree or 3D Torus network. Like you know that if there is 4 servers are there, if I want to connect these 4 server into in data communication, I am deploying a hub or a switch, and I am connecting these servers, and so that one node can communicate data with other nodes. So this we call as a star topology. Similarly, you can go for a mesh topology. For example, I am taking 4 different components in the mesh topology. Then each component can be connected to each other in the mesh topology. Similarly, there are some other topologies are there that we call as an interconnection network, which the example of the such interconnection network is called Hat tree or 3D Torus network you can use in the supercomputer system. So data center, these servers you can connect through various connections, connected devices, like we can use the 10 Gbps Ethernet network or 1 Gbps Ethernet network, so that one component can communicate with other components as well. Similarly, not only in Microsoft, if you go for NASA, many people are referring NASA, United States NASA. NASA also uses a private cloud, and this private cloud determines the climate model on the remote systems. So they are using their own private cloud in order to own private cloud, and this private cloud has helping to predict the various climate models. So similarly, European Council for Nuclear Research also uses a very big private cloud for its personal work. So you can devise your own private cloud for your organization, so that it is more secure in comparison to the public cloud. But if you see, in the backbone of cloud computing, we have grid computing. That's why grid computing is said to be the backbone of cloud computing, so that various sharing aggregation things you can do by the help of grid computing structure. So if you see this particular diagram, we are present in this particular one. This is your nothing but your application layer. We are using internet. So our internet is connected to the border router. This is called as border router, right? So border router is connected to various SS router, AR, that is SS router, AR is called SS router. So we are giving services to the data center, or we are accessing to the cloud services with a different layer structure. So first layer is called as your internet layer. By internet layer, you can access to the cloud. So internet layer connected to the border router connected to the SS router. Finally, SS router is connected to these switches. That is, S is nothing but the switches, and these switches are connected in such a manner that they can be connected to the rack of servers. So a lot of servers, like I told you, in data center we have 50,000 servers to million of servers. So in the bottom layer you have infrastructure. So these things you can access through these switches, and which is in turn connected to SS router. SS router is connected to border router, and we are accessing to the border router by the help of internet. So in order to balance the load of this particular server, it may happen that this server is busy for 90% or 90% of the time, and this server is busy for 2% of the time. In order to say that this particular system is a overloaded system and this system is a underloaded system, we have deployed the load balancer. This load balancer will make sure that whatever servers you are using, these servers should not be overloaded and underloaded. That's why various load balancers are deployed in this particular layer in order to balance the load of the servers. So one may say that why I want to go for cloud? If a traditional computing structures are there, then why should I go for cloud? What kind of advantages I will get in cloud? So if you see, there is a proper example is given here. So in the classical computing, for example, if you go for classical computing, one person will go for cloud computing. So what is the difference you see? As I already mentioned, if you remember, each and every computer systems, whatever processors are you are using, or whatever motherboards you are using, or whatever communication devices you are using, these are changing with in each and every 18 months. Each and every 18 months, these hardwares and softwares are obsolete. But if you go for cloud computing, you are not owning any, you are not purchasing any kind of hardware, you are not purchasing any kind of storage. So what will happen? So after 18 months, if the hardware is changed or the software is changed, it is the responsibility of the cloud service provider like Amazon or Microsoft or Google. They will change the hardware and software. So we need not bother about this hardware and software. So that is the advantages you will get. So classical computing, we are purchasing hardware, we are purchasing the software, we are purchasing various applications, or we are running various applications, but such type of things are not there in the cloud computing, because this buying and owning part is taken care by the cloud service provider. We are simply subscribing the service and we are paying for our services. So after 18 months, if something will be changed, that will not affect to us. Similarly, if you see, installation, configuration, testing, verification, evaluation, manage is required in the case of classical computing, but it is not required in the case of cloud computing, because installing, configuring, everything will be taken care by cloud service provider. That's why cloud service provider will manage this particular thing, and it should not be a burden to the user, so that the people are moving to the cloud service provider. Similarly, if you see, the cost whatever incurred in the classical computing is much more higher in comparison to the cost spent in the cloud computing. That's why people are moving towards cloud computing instead of going for the classical computing. Similarly, if you want to go for cloud, if you want to design the cloud computing, it is having a various objectives. Like if a particular work is there, so each and every work, each and every problem has an objective. If you go for weather forecasting data is having also one type of objective. So if you want to design the cloud, the first objective is that shifting computing from desktop to data center. Early days, what happened? If a organization having loads, they are purchasing desktop machines. But nowadays, they are not purchasing the desktop system. They are moving from the desktop systems to the data centers. So that purchasing the infrastructure for desktops is there. Similarly, second objective is that the services are provisioned in the cloud at any point of time. You can access to the service into 24 into 7 in a week. So there is no time there. There is no peak hour. There is no off peak hour. At any point of time, you can enter to the cloud system and you can use the services. So in the cost point of view, there is a peak hour and an off peak hour, but you can use the services at any particular time. So the pricing scheme of a cloud is that if you are using the services for 24 hours, you are going to pay for 24 hours. If you are going to use the services for 10 hours, you are paying for only 10 hours. So that is called as your pay as you go model. So based upon your usage, you will go for the services. Third objective is that the scalability in the performance. Performance can be increased and decreased at a particular time. Privacy concerns is not taken care by the user. It is taken care by the cloud service provider. So it should be also one of the objective. So you can ask one question also: can you trust the data center to handle your private data? For example, like online SBI is there. Online SBI is hosted by SBI, right? So you can ask that whatever amount you have in the online SBI, whether it is secure or not. If it is a private cloud, it is there in the online, it is there in the SBI boundary, then you can say everything is managed by SBI only. So it is more secure in comparison to the public cloud. You have to also ensure that the quality of service you are providing. That's why in the last class I told you about the quality of service. If some specific requirement is there with respect to the reliability and availability, you have to ensure that the reliability is fulfilled for a particular user. Similarly, new standard and interfaces should be designed in order to solve the data lock-in problem of the cloud computing. So these are the set of objectives we will discuss in this particular chapter, so that if you are fulfilling these objectives, you can say you can design a cloud computing system in a much better way. So if you compare the traditional system, we are purchasing the infrastructure, we are purchasing the desktop and laptop and various interconnection devices. So we have a fixed cost. But whenever we are moving to the cloud computing, we have only the variable cost. But if you go for the traditional computing system, you are purchasing your infrastructure and you are maintaining that systems. So you have fixed cost as well as variable cost in the traditional structure. But if you move to the cloud computing, you are going to pay for only to the variable cost, not to the fixed cost. That is the advantages you will get. So if you go for cloud ecosystem is divided into 4 parts. The first part is nothing but the individual user can access to a particular cloud service that we call as consumer demand a flexible platform. Second is there are various cloud service providers are there, as we already called as Amazon or Eucalyptus or Globus, Nimbus. These are various cloud service providers are there. They are managing the resources so that a better service can be provided to the user. Third part is that there is a virtual infrastructure management is there. They are managing these resources. It may happen that one server is failed, or it may happen that a server is not getting power. Everything is managed by the cloud service provider. So users should not bother about these particular services. Finally, in the bottom where there is a virtualization techniques as there, like I mentioned, VMware, alternative VMware is you can use Gen system, or you can say a KVM. KVM stands for K virtual machine. Such type of things should be there so that multiple users can access to this particular infrastructure. The first one is user end says that there is consumer provides a consumers are provided a flexible platform. Second one is cloud management level says that cloud manager provides a virtualized resources over a infrastructure as a service platform. Third one is a virtual infrastructure in which we are managing the virtual machines and we are managing the server part, which server is working or which server is overloaded, which server is underloaded. That you can take care by the help of VI management. In the bottom level, you have the virtual machines and managing the virtual machines. So some of the examples of the VI tools, is you can see that there is a virtual infrastructure here. VI, if you see some of the examples of VI, this OVIRT, vSphere, class 4, VM Orchestra, these are the examples of various VI tools. Next, we move to private cloud, much more secure in comparison to public cloud, so which you can leverage your existing IT infrastructure. So the infrastructure is present in your institute boundary or your organization boundary, so it is more secure, and one firewall system may be designed so that it is more secure in comparison to the public cloud. So you have to balance the workload to exploit the IT resources within the internet if you are going for the private cloud. So it also provides, private cloud also provide pre-production testing, enforce data privacy and security policies. As it is limited to a particular boundary, so nobody can inject anything to that particular infrastructure. But it is public, means it is present anywhere, so anybody can attack at any particular time. So this is the advantages of the private cloud. So in the next class, we will go for these various types of services.